Well, Courtney, I am delighted to have you here. I know you've been a podcast listener for a while. I know we've been talking about your property investing via email and Facebook groups and all that stuff for a while as well. So I'm super excited to have you here just to talk through everything that you've been up to over the past couple of years and how your property journey is progressing. But first of all, I just want to say a huge thanks for joining me today.
Absolutely. And thanks for inviting me, Mike. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Good. Well, like I say, I'm delighted to have you here. And I think we will have a lot of interesting insights to share with our audience. I know you were talking just before we started recording. Some of the challenges you've faced definitely rung a few bells with me, and I'm sure other people will have been through similar things before. And, you know, there's always a solution to all of these things that you come across. I think that resilience that you've shown is a big part of investing. So we'll get into all of that. But just to get started off, it'd be good to go back in time a little bit before property. I know you were aspiring for the heady heights of getting signed by Arsenal once upon a time. And I guess football was a big part of your life growing up. So can you tell me a little bit about that and your background there?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So football was a big part of my life, and not just football, Mike, it was sport in general. So I was always very, very sporty growing up. Football was my main sport. I was also quite a fast runner as well. So I used to do 100 meters as well, but football was really the thing for me. And I had various opportunities. I was scouted by some pro clubs, had trials, had training sessions, had matches. And unfortunately, you've probably heard this story many times from aspiring footballers. I had a number of serious injuries, which halted my career a little bit. So I had a double leg break, and I had an operation which had a pin in my leg from knee to ankle with bolts and screws and everything. So I've got a bit of a bionic leg. So yeah, that's the background of where my football career started.
And was that the end of it? Was there any coming back from that at all? Or did you know at that point that football wasn't going to be your future?
Well, two consultants said, you're probably not advisable to play again because of how serious the break was. I did make a return back, but I was just never the same player again, because of the toll it took on my body. And I'd lost a lot of speed and strength in the leg. So I was never the same player. I did have various stints in semi-pro football after that, though. So I did carry on playing. And ironically, I'm still playing till today as well. So yeah.
Good. Well, I'm glad to hear you're still enjoying it. How did you feel at the time? Because I imagine as a young guy, that must have been a huge blow.
It was. And what was interesting at the time when I was younger as well, Mike, a lot of people would always say to me, make sure you get good education because, your football career is not, it doesn't last forever and anything can happen. You could get injured or, you could get released from a pro club and then you need to have an education to fall back. But I wasn't listening to that. I was saying, nope, Arsene Wenger's going to sign me. I'm going to make it. I'm going to play for Arsenal. And then the leg break happened. So yeah, there's probably a lot of people in the background saying, told you so, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I get that. And, kind of all jokes aside about, their views and I imagine it still must have been very difficult for you to think what comes next. Like, this is what I've committed my life to. And all of a sudden it's just taken away from you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I made some decisions around going back into education, probably for the wrong reasons. So I decided to go back to college simply because I knew I didn't want to get a job and work because football was still going to be my thing. So I thought to myself, hang on a minute, if I stay in education, no one can really say I'm not doing anything. I'm still, progressing. I'm still learning. And the idea was to try and still get back into football, but it just never really worked out. So, and then I fell into the corporate world.
Yeah. As you do, right? I mean, you try to avoid work as long as possible, but it gets there. What did that look like for you?
So I graduated from uni with a degree in multimedia technology, which was various different avenues. And then for some strange reason, I fell into the industry of cybersecurity. And I don't know how that happened. And I'm still in cybersecurity today. And I've had a very successful career. I've worked my way up the corporate ladder, as they say. So yeah, I'm doing well in my career. But property really is the thing that I'm, starting to do a bit more actively now and taking it more seriously.
Yeah. When did you first start looking at property as an investment, I guess, rather than just a place to live?
Lockdown was probably the catalyst for this. 2020, 2021 is when we took this really seriously. So if I backtrack a little bit, Mike, if you don't mind. So we bought our first property in 2016 as a residential home. But the long-term plan was for that to always be switched over to a buy-to-let because we bought in Croydon off the back of plans of a Westfield shopping centre being, there was plans for Westfield shopping centre to be built. So we thought this would be a good investment for us in the future. At the time, we had no idea what BR meant, but we just knew if we bought a property at a good price, added some value to it, we knew that it's technically meant to be worth more money. But again, at the time, I had no idea what a BR or whatever that meant. So that's what we did. And then 2-3 years later, we refinanced. We pulled some money out of that property, and we bought another place.
Okay, so I mean, it was still, I guess, although not the first purpose of that property was somewhere to live, you still looked at it from an investment lens, thinking, well, we're going to buy something that was undervalued. It needed a bit of work as well, from memory, right?
Yes,
so
it did,
you renovated it, and then you knew theoretically, at least, that should add some value to it over the long term.
Yeah. But without any of the strategies or, the knowledge that we've gained over the years of the ins and outs of property investing, the numbers and things like that, we had no idea about any of that in 2016. We just knew at a high level that you can buy a property at a low value, add value to it, and it should be worth more money.
Yeah, it's kind of common sense. Yeah. It's like the UK obsession with property, like homes under the hammer. We see it, right? Like, even if we're not investors, we still know that our house is usually a fairly good asset to invest in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And was it the refinance of that then gave you money to go on to start investing?
Yes. So the refinance, so we then bought another residential place. So we then moved to Essex. And I'll caveat that I'm not an Essex boy. A lot of people in the community call me an Essex boy now. So I thought I'd get that out there. I'm still a Londoner, born and bred.
Okay.
So yeah, we bought our residential home in Essex a few years later. Similar sort of process, Mike. So we added some value to that place. We refinanced that straight away. Then that was the money that allowed us to invest in our first HMO.
Got you. And you said that was around about lockdown that you started thinking about property as more of an investment rather than a place to live.
Yeah, well, you're to blame for that, actually, Mike. So
I'll take the blame for that. That's something I'm happy to take the blame for.
Yeah, we came across the IPI podcast, and we were hooked on that. We started listening to all the episodes on that, and then we took the plunge on the HMO course, and I suppose that really just gave us the confidence to really take the plunge and get into HMOs. And it was only a few months later, after joining the course, that we had an offer accepted on our first HMO. So it just goes to show sometimes that having the right support around you and community around you just helps you, gives you that push to take that leap of faith. Because we probably would have been sitting on research analysis ourselves for years if we didn't just go all in.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Sometimes that investment in yourself just triggers something in your mind saying, no, okay, I've been thinking about this for a while, but now it's serious. I've spent money on this, or I've committed the time to it. It can have a positive impact for a lot of people, almost more so than the content or the education or the training itself, is that shift, that sort of permission to yourself that, this is actually what I'm going to do. I've made that commitment now. So let's just crack on
absolutely.
And do it.
Yeah.
What was it? You said you came across the podcast, but I mean, you're not just like casually like walking through Tesco and you're like, oh shit, there's the IPI podcast. Like, were you looking specifically at property investment? Were you just looking for like side hustles? Were you looking for a route out? Like what stage were you at that made you sort of go into iTunes or wherever and come across a property investment podcast in the first place?
Yeah, good question. I suppose it started from typical Google searches, how to invest in property, how to make money in property education courses or training. And, yours was one of the names that kept on coming up quite often, along with a few others. And I suppose yours and Victoria's story just, I suppose, really resonated more with myself and Ellie, with similar backgrounds in terms of, from the corporate world. You were in IT just like I was in, IT security.
Also have no idea how I ended up in that, by the way, just like you. Yeah. So,
Ellie was a project manager as well. So there was some synergies there in your stories. And we just really liked the content that you was putting out. It was very authentic. It was very real. There was no, fluff and, anything behind it. It was just genuine, and it just resonated with us. That's the honest answer to that.
Okay. And it was, so you'd done the two projects in your sort of personal housing situation, I guess, thinking that gave you an idea that you could make some money from property.
Yeah.
Was the goal from the start to think, I mean, you said you're still working in cybersecurity, right?
Yeah.
Like, has the goal always been, I want to replace my income? Like, I'm unhappy with my job or I'm not earning enough money? Or was it more of a long-term sideline? What was the motivation?
Yeah, so it's a combination of all of those things. So in terms of the job, it's absolutely to replace the job income. In terms of earning enough, I earn quite a lot in the job that I do. I'm in a sales role as well, so obviously you get the incentives around bonuses and commissions, etc. Sure. And the cybersecurity industry, not to bore the users, the listeners on this, is a very booming industry at the moment. So it's very stable. But we are looking at this as a business long term. And so that is really the goal with HMOs. And I suppose the reason we chose HMOs is just, I suppose it's the speed that you can get to that income goal through renting out multiple rooms.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the biggest reasons that, I like them is because you can make a lot of money from them. I've got no qualms about saying that we're in this to make a profit. And if we can do that whilst creating nice places for people to live, then great. You get that sort of double-edged sword,
exactly.
Right? But you mentioned Ellie there as well. So I think she's still working full time as well.
She's gone part time now.
Okay.
Yep.
And is the idea that you both work on the property business together?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we'll do.
Okay. So there's a shared passion there,
and absolutely. So we'll be the opposite way around to you and Victoria. So I think Ellie will retire from the day job first before I do. I think you retired first, didn't you, Mike, from the day job?
I mean, I'd say retired loosely. I definitely stepped away from corporate life first.
Yeah.
Although I'd still argue that I work a lot harder than Victoria, but don't tell her that.
Yeah.
It's maybe balanced out a little bit now that baby's come along. I think I've kind of lost my argument that I work harder than her. But I made the jump first. She stayed around, kept the salary, as you're probably thinking. If you've got that stable salary from a mortgage point of view and everything else. Working together as a couple has a lot of advantages, some downsides as well. I'm sure you've had a few heated conversations along the way.
Oh yes.
But yeah, no, it's nice to have one person that can focus on building up that income from property, but still have that stability of the monthly salary. Mortgage companies like you more. It's a good way to go about it.
Yeah.
So. That's great that she's down to part-time now. And in terms of the HMO side of things, so when did you join Inside HMO Investing? Was it 2020 or
April 2021?
2021.
Yes.
Okay, so just coming up for about 2 years now. And you've got your skipping ahead a little bit, I guess, to kind of reveal the punchline early. You said you've got your first HMO up and running, fully renovated, tenanted, and refinanced now.
Yes.
So like fully done and dusted.
Yes.
Okay. What did the process look like for finding that first deal? Was it, first of all, I suppose you said you moved to Essex. So have you decided to invest in Essex?
So we invest in Ipswich, which is about a 40 minute drive from where we live.
Okay.
And
so not too far, but equally not like right on your doorstep. What was the reason behind that?
So again, part of the course as well, we wanted to pick a radius that was still inside of an hour for us to get to. Because it just made it easy for, if I needed to go up there quickly, I could easily go on the day without any forward planning. It wasn't, it didn't take out half of my day or a whole day of traveling. It was, an hour and a bit to get up there and back, basically. So that was the main reason. It was to be inside a particular radius. So we drew a circle from our point of address where we live and looked at all the areas that came up within that circle. Now, some areas were areas like Cambridge, which was just not really affordable and didn't really work for us. So we looked a bit further out to the east, and Ipswich came up. So we started doing some analysis, research into the area. I used to go up there, 2-3 days a week. I'd get talking to, local people in the coffee shop. A good tip actually is speaking to taxi drivers. I used to get taxis everywhere in Ipswich, and most taxi drivers love to talk. But the ones that have been doing it for a number of years have a lot of knowledge about the areas. So there was a few taxi drivers that used to tell me a lot about what Ipswich used to be like 30 years ago, how it's changed over the years, the regeneration of the waterfront in Ipswich. So yeah, I earned a lot of research and knowledge from those taxi drivers.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose, like you say, that they'll know the good areas, the bad areas, where the students live, where the professionals live, like all of those insights that can sort of help you build up that picture. So did you go into that without much sort of awareness of Ipswich then? You didn't have any, any previous knowledge? You've never lived there or family there or anything like that?
No, none at all. All I knew about Ipswich was just from from the football side, the history of Ipswich Football Club. That's all I knew of Ipswich. Yeah.
Okay. Are they a good team? I've got no idea.
They're okay.
They're okay. Fine.
I don't want anything to come back on me to say anything else.
Exactly. Yeah. But I suppose from a general point of view, it's got a big hospital. There's a university there. Good, commuter links to other locations. I mean, you're not a million miles away from London there. So like it ticks a lot of boxes. Absolutely, generally, in terms of being a good basis for research into HMOs making sense. And then from an actual sourcing point of view, what did that look like? How long did it take? What sort of stuff were you looking at? Did it take you a long time to find your first deal?
So I don't think it did take a long time. So if you look, we joined the course in April 2021 and we had an offer accepted on this place in October of the same year. So it was only a few months. And we'd done a lot of viewings within that time, and it was all from Rightmove. Mike, there was no crazy different strategies and off-market strategies. It was simply Rightmove searches. We did build up a bit of a relationship with one particular estate agent who was bringing us deals before they actually went on to Rightmove, because they knew that we were ready to go. So in their eyes, we were a good buyer. When we were in no chain, we didn't have to sell our own house. We were actively ready to go. So he did bring us a few deals before it went onto Rightmove. So that was quite good.
Okay. Yeah. And I mean, I suppose I'm quite dismissive of residential estate agents, not in a general sense, but more from like a relationship building point of view, because there are so many of them that if you're new to an area, it can be hard to stand out from other investors. Yeah. And, even as investors, we're not really ideal buyers because we're buying based on a spreadsheet rather than first-time buyers, owner-occupiers who buy with their heart rather than their head in a lot of cases. Yeah. But I mean, it's interesting to hear that did work out for you. Was that just through sort of being a nice person, consistently following up? Like how did that relationship develop?
Yeah, a combination of all those things. We had a mutual interest of football as well. One of the main estate agents there and the sales manager. I'm
sensing a theme through your life here. You've managed to cling on to it, even though
can't let go.
But I mean, it shows you, right? Like just some common ground can have a huge impact. And I know one thing you're looking at now is the private finance stuff as well. Like. Yeah. That anything like that just helps build that relationship quicker than being a stranger with nothing in common, whether it's a relationship with an agent, with a vendor, if you get direct to vendor leads, if it's with a potential investor, like that common ground can really help nurture those relationships quicker than having no common ground at all.
Absolutely. And I've said that in my day job, Mike, for many years as well. Find the common ground as early as possible with your client.
You're a salesman, right? So this is
absolutely, and everyone has something in common with someone, regardless of what it is. If you dig deep enough, you'll always find something in common with anyone. Yeah.
Okay. And what did that first deal look like then?
So the first deal wasn't the easiest of deals, in terms of if you was to advise a newbie person in property. So it was actually an auction purchase.
Okay.
So we And the story behind this was, so it came onto before it came onto the market. So with this particular agent, he told us it's a probate property that's going to go via auction, but he let us view it a week beforehand. And we said, well, look, we could do a good deal here. We could offer at a certain price, if you didn't go out to auction. But the sellers were dead set on it going to auction. It went to auction and they didn't get what they wanted for it. They ended up getting the offer that we said in the first place. So they could have saved themselves a bit of hassle. We probably could have saved a bit of money as well in terms of auction fees and everything else with that. But we got the deal in the end. It's worth noting it was a modern auction purchase as well, Mike. So the completion was 56 days, not 28 days.
And you pay the fees rather than the vendor in that case?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Which just means that you're going to reduce your maximum bid by whatever the fees are.
Exactly. Yeah.
Fine if they don't realize that. I definitely have a bugbear about modern method of auction, but we won't delve into that today. I've moaned about it enough times on the podcast. So in terms of, did you actually secure it at the auction then, or did it not sell and you went and bought it afterwards?
No, we secured it at the auction. So
okay, fine.
Yeah, picture it like eBay. The countdown's going down, and it was pretty much that.
Stressful, or were you confident enough buying it through because that's I guess your first HMO, first auction purchase, like there's a couple of new elements going on there. How did you feel going through that process?
So I'll be honest, I didn't feel as nervous as I would have done if I hadn't been on the course and knew what was to come, for example. So it wasn't like I jumped into this fully blind. I didn't know, I'm going to have to get HMO licenses and things like that and the renovation. Yeah. So I knew what was to come. So it wasn't that scary.
Okay.
And in all honesty, I didn't think we were actually going to win the bid. I thought in the last 5 seconds, just like an eBay, you're going to get loads of bids coming in, and we weren't actually going to be the winning bid. And then it got to 2 seconds and 1 second, and nothing had happened. And it said we'd won, and I was like, "Oh, okay,
we actually got to do this.
This is real now." Yeah,
yeah. And when you bought it, was a residential house?
Yes. Yep.
How big was it?
3 bed, semi-detached.
3 bed.
Yep.
Okay. Did it need? I mean, could a family move in there and live in it as it was, or did it need renovating?
It regardless of? Yeah, needed a lot of work. And that was the other point, Mike. To come back to your question about the agent as well. Investors not being the ideal buyer, so our specific requirements to the agent was, we want really rundown properties, basically, that you're going to struggle to sell to a first-time buyer who doesn't really want a project or doesn't want to do work. They just want to move into somewhere that's good to go. So they took that on board, and they were bringing us the properties that did meet our criteria. So I think that went in our favor as well.
Okay, and then what did the actual renovation look like? So this was back in October 21.
It was actually Halloween, the day of the auction as well. You couldn't make this up, I know. Yeah.
And then that means you're completing on the auction, like your 56 days is going to expire like on Christmas Day or something like that.
Yeah. We had a bit of an extension on that, mutually agreed, because of the whole Christmas period, and no one likes to work within that awkward period of Christmas and New Year, so it kind of went into January a bit.
Okay.
We didn't.
So then January 22, you're starting on the works.
In theory.
Right. What happened?
So we didn't end up completing until March.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So way past the 56 days. And there were a few times where the seller, had threatened to pull out, but we were so close. The hold up was really with our bridging lender. They just kept on coming back with additional questions, things that they could have asked right at the start, and it kept on delaying things. Then they were querying the works, which their asset manager had already approved. So it's almost like they were having an internal argument with their asset manager. Then they queried the extension. It just went on and on and on. But every week, the seller was threatening to pull out. And we were doing our best with our solicitors to give them the assurance that, the delay is not with us. We are ready to go. And then, eventually we got it over the line in March of 2022.
So had they pulled out, you would have lost I guess you would have paid like a 10% deposit or reservation fee or something like that. Lost
just under 10K.
Okay, so keeping them on board was really important.
Absolutely, yeah. And don't forget all the money we'd invested with the architects, the plans.
So you made a start on all that whilst conveyancing was going
engineers.
through.
We had all of that money was already invested. So we were invested emotionally and financially as well to get this over the line.
Did you let your bridging lender know that it was an auction purchase? Like, do you feel like, I guess, would you have done anything differently doing it again? Would you have used a different lender? Yeah. I know like specialist auction bridging lenders exist, but even still, they're not always as fast as they say they will be. So how could that have been improved?
We definitely would have used a different lender, someone who's a bit more specialist in auction purchases. There's probably a few things we could have preempted, but I just think the lender would have been the main thing for us, is to use a different lender. We did make them aware at the start it was an auction purchase, and they totally got that. Said should be fine to complete within 56 days. But
it's frustrating. I mean, I know we're going through a couple of refinance. We always seem to be going through refinances that take longer than I want them to, but you never really know. Is it the solicitors that aren't doing their job? Is it the lender that's kind of telling them to slow down? Like you can't really tell. So I just tend to shout at everyone and hope that somebody eventually does their job. Yeah. But it's frustrating because there's that pressure on you. You use bridging finance because there's a time constraint normally, right?
Yeah.
And for it to take in our case, we've had a refinance going on since like September last year. So like 6 or 7 months for a bridge, which is absurd. And then every week you think, okay, we're going to complete. And then the solicitors are like, oh, here's another question that we could have asked you 6 months ago. Yep. It's a frustrating game to be in, but it's that perseverance. I think that, it sets you apart from, I don't want to say other investors, because we're all doing the same thing. We're all putting in the sort of hard yards, but you need to have a bit of perseverance and strength to stick out this game, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And communication was just a big thing throughout this whole process as well. It's just keeping everyone in the loop. As soon as we heard something, we would try and give something back, say, look, this is what's happening, before they then chased us. So if it looked like they were always chasing us from the seller's perspective, it looks bad on our part. So we'd always try and be as proactive as possible and go to them with information first. Even if it's bad news, still being upfront with that. Yeah, exactly that. We said we were going to complete Friday, but it's looking like it's going to be next week Friday instead now. So and
then once you've said that 12 times in a row, you're like, I don't know what's going on anymore. Yeah. Okay, so March 22, then you complete on the purchase, and you said it was a fairly big renovation.
It was, yes. It was the initial quote was around about 100K refurb.
So sizable.
Yeah, so we had a builder lined up who we were working with throughout the viewing process as well. So the agents was allowing us to bring builders in to get quotes and look at the property, etc., to produce the schedule of works, which we had to give to the lender as well. So we were due to start the renovation initially in February, because we should have completed December, January time. That didn't happen. So we were pushing things back slightly, which worked in the builder's favor anyway, because his previous project kind of overran anyway. Then it came to the start date, or the week before due to start, and the builder said he's running a bit late, so he had to start 2 weeks later, which was okay, fine. It's only another week or two. Then it got to the day of starting, and the builder called us up and said, no longer able to take on this job.
Ooh, okay.
On the day of starting. Yeah.
Any context? Do you think they'd had another job come in that was paying them better, or?
We think he had when I say better job, an easier job. So where our property was located, there was no parking on the street. Okay. So you had to park around the corner. So, and he'd already mentioned something before that around, waste and skips, etc. But there's an estate agent opposite the road who allowed us to use his drive for a skip. So that mitigated that question right there. But I just feel he didn't take on the job just because he had an easier job. And, it is what it is. You take, it was at a time where builders could be picky as well. If you think what was happening in 2021, 2022, builders were cherry picking their jobs, weren't
crazy,
they? So,
yeah. It seems to be easing now, which is good. But it was a tough time.
Yeah. But if I fast forward, putting my positive hat on again, Mike, everything happens for a reason, because the builders that we then found after that have been absolutely amazing. And,
how long did it take you to find that other builder and get them in place? Because that sounds like that could be a delay of a month, if not more.
Yeah, it's probably at least a 2-3 month delay, I think it was. Yeah. So we started the works of the new builders in September. But it's worth noting now we were already 5-6 months into our bridge, into a 9-month bridge as well. So if I talk about learning curves as well, we would never take out a 9-month bridge. We'd always do 12 months.
Give yourself the extra time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You're better off completing early. So, which brings me to my next point. We had to extend our bridge.
Okay.
And I'm sure you know how expensive that could be, Mike. So
their fees aren't the best. Yeah. Okay. So that was, so hold on. You took out the bridge in March. So that would have taken you up until like the end of last year.
It was
more
December.
Or less.
I think it was December it ran our bridge. Yeah. It was December.
Okay. You were on with the project by then, but I guess only, how long did the renovation take in total?
Just over 4 months.
So you started September and finished like sort of end of the year or January this year. Yeah. Okay. So going back to the bridging lender saying we're close, but not quite there. Yeah. And you've still got the refinance and everything to deal with as well, which takes time. Yeah. So how did that, were they happy, despite the fees, was that an easy enough process to do?
No, it was not easy at all. I
hope people are taking notes here. All the things not to do on a project. I mean, and it's just, it shows you, right? Like a lot of these things are out with your control, like the builder not showing up, so lenders, solicitors taking longer than you expect them to. like you just, I think, having a dose of realism, in terms of, okay, I'd like this to take 6 months, but let's give ourselves 18 and see what that looks like. And can we still make it work at that?
And also, as well, I've said the whole time, is there's only so much you can learn from a podcast or from a video or from a course.
Oh, for sure.
Sometimes you just got to be in the trenches doing the work and experiencing things.
It's the best education by far.
Yeah. And we learned a lot throughout this whole process, even working with the council as well. So around the HMO licenses and, the amenities and various different other things that the council would like you to do. So, and we've actually got quite a good relationship with our HMO officer as well, which has been really good. So yeah, lots of learning curves throughout this. And
do they like football as well?
He doesn't like football, to be fair, but there's a lot of negative press sometimes about HMO officers don't actually like HMOs, or they're really against HMOs. But he actually said to us, I don't understand this negative press around HMOs. He said, at the end of the day, there's a housing crisis at the moment. We need more properties. We need landlords developing properties like this. So he's all for it, he said. And that was so refreshing to hear him say that.
Yeah. No, we've typically had a pretty good experience with HMO officers. Planning officers less so. But I know what you mean. Some of them are great, and I think if you're creating a good product that meets all of their requirements, you make their job easy for them. There's not much for them not to like necessarily, but you'll still find the odd one that may cause problems. But yeah, no, licensing we've typically not had many problems with. Planning can be a whole different ballgame. But that then involves neighbors and local councillors and a bunch of people who've got their own agendas. So not always as straightforward. Whereas licensing is more like, do you meet the minimum space standards? Have you provided ample kitchen, cupboards and enough bathrooms? And like, they've got their standards, and as long as you meet those guidelines, you should be okay. Yeah. Okay. I know you're pretty handy as well, or at least you have been handy. Like when the builder didn't start back in March or whenever it was there any temptation to roll up your sleeves and do some of the work yourself?
Well, I'd done the strip out myself. So that was a job that I've always taken on. So ripped everything out, and it was literally a shell. So even when the builders came around to give us the quotes and the schedule of works, it was pretty much 50-60% ripped out anyway. So they all knew it was going to be ripped out beforehand. In terms of was I tempted to do any of the work myself? Nah, not on a project of this scale. This was certainly out of my remit, Mike. Yeah, certainly outside of my remit.
A good strip out's always fun, but after like a week of trying to get that dust out of your nose, you kind of think, that's enough for me. I'll focus on finding deals and keep the day job ticking over. Yeah. And I guess you were trying to juggle that at the same time as well.
Yeah.
So, okay, getting towards the end of this project then, unless you've got any more problems with builders or anything like that, I'm curious to know how it's all worked out, because as is often the case, right? Like, actually, if you talk about projects, we always like to do a debrief at the end of our projects, and like, they can sound pretty bad. Like there can be a lot of negatives, lessons learned. And I think that's just because we tend to remember the things that caused us that stress and that pain. But what was the end result? Was it worth it all in the end?
Yeah, I mean, well, the honest answer is, Mike, there were no issues with our build at all. The team that we had in place were absolutely amazing. They were experienced in HMOs. It's what they do. So we actually learned.
How did you find them? Was it a recommendation?
It was a recommendation from another investor that we met in Ipswich.
So that helps.
Yeah, that absolutely helped. But they knew everything. They knew the standards. They knew what they had to do. And we learned a lot from them as well. And there were no hiccups whatsoever. So yeah, I mean, I almost wish certain things did go wrong, because I know at some point in our journey things are going to go wrong. So I'm just thinking if we had learned some things earlier on. But yeah, it was absolutely amazing. Yeah, the team were great.
Good. And you said that finished up around January this year. Yeah,
we actually finished sort of end of December, and then they came back in January to do the final snags and things like that. So, yeah.
And January is usually a pretty good time to get HMOs on the market. Lots of people thinking about moving. Like December, it gets quiet. They're busy with Christmas, and nobody really wants to move in the run up to that. But then come January, fresh year, fresh start, all that stuff. Did you find that the market was strong? Did the rooms let easily enough? Did you get the rent that you wanted for them?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're using a specialist HMO management agent. And within the first, I think, day of the advert going live, they had about 20 people booked for an open house.
Wow. Okay.
And
how many? What did you create? Sorry, was it? So you said it was a 3-bed to start. What did you end up with?
a 6-bed, 5-bed bathroom.
Okay, perfect. So 20 viewings, 6 bedrooms. Pretty good start.
Yeah, 4 en-suites and 1 shared bathroom. So it's a good ratio as well. And it was a really high-end product as well, Mike. We've always wanted to go for that sort of higher-end type spec. And the agent and the HMO officer said it's probably one of the best HMOs he's seen in the area as well. So we'll do pretty well with it, they said. And yes, we did get the rents that we wanted.
Okay.
We actually
Are you happy to talk me through the numbers for the project?
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess starting off, the usual stuff: purchase price, renovations.
Yeah. So purchase price was 208,000.
208 or 280?
208. Yep.
Okay.
And that includes the reservation fee. So we always included our reservation fee because it was an auction purchase. We included that and factored that into it.
Sure.
Yeah.
And like I know I'm generalizing here by saying down south, right? For me, anything south of Hadrian's Wall is down south. Yeah. But like for Ipswich, 208,000 for a 3-bed, like that's not a huge sum of money.
No, it's not. It's not. It's changed drastically now, but at the time, at the time, it definitely wasn't. No.
Okay, good. So you then you said what, about 100 grand you had budgeted for the renovations?
Yeah. So 115,000 total refurb was in the end. We had about 10K worth of additional work, which wasn't it wasn't accounted for. Sorry, but it was in our contingency.
Sure.
And that was. We had to end up removing one of the chimney breasts and getting some more steels in and a few other bits and pieces. But you factor that into your contingency, don't you? So
yeah, 10 grand on 100K. It's not a huge overspend.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was a few design choices which we couldn't agree on between myself and Ellie. So she won that battle, which means we had to spend a bit more. So yeah, some battles that I'm not prepared to sort of fight when it comes to that. So yeah.
Okay. Fine. But yeah, we like the high end stuff. I'm sure it will have impacted on the rents that you got and the end value as well. There's definitely a line to be drawn. I think it can be taken too far. Yeah. But, for the market you're going after, let's say that Ellie made the right decision.
Yeah, she did. Yeah.
Okay.
But let's not tell her that though.
And you said so not only have you had the valuation done, but like refinance done and dusted, legals through. So like money's in the bank and you can say confidently what you got it valued at.
Yeah, so refinance was completed on the 28th of February, so literally only last week. We had it revalued for 360.
Okay, 360 on like a 325K spend roughly?
Yeah. Okay,
so that's like maybe like 50K left in it, something like that?
Yeah, about 55K I think it was.
Good. Yeah. And from a rental income point of view, I'll let people work out the yields and stuff themselves, but roughly what are you getting per room in there?
650 for the big rooms.
Nice.
And there's two, and there's 2 rooms that are sharing a bathroom, and they are 550.
Okay. So like north of 3.5 grand for the house gross a month.
Yes.
Good.
Which is pretty good. Okay. It was kind of pushing the rental a bit, but it was a really high spec project. So it was definitely worth it.
I like to pitch ourselves there. Like, even if we're not significantly higher than what else is on the market, being the highest price, you set yourself apart as that premium product. There will be people who shop on price from they want somewhere cheap to live, but there are also people who will go into Spare Room and say, you know what, I want to live in the nicest house in the area, and they will filter from highest to lowest. So by having the most expensive house, you're immediately showing up, it's kind of like SEO to an extent for Spare Room, getting at the top of the listings for people who are price conscious in as much as they want to live in the nicest place. So that's cool. Yeah. Well, I'm glad that's all worked out for you. In terms of the strategy from here, so what is the next project look like? What does the growth of the business look like from here?
So we actually had an offer accepted on another property in December whilst we were going through the refinance process. Okay. And again, it was another 3-bed property. This was, unfortunately, the seller passed away a few weeks ago, which means now the property has to go through probate. So that's obviously fallen through, if that's the right phrase, in situations like this. I mean, I've never come across a situation like this before, so I don't know if that's the right terminology to say it's fallen through, but it's no longer happening is what I'm saying. We will keep our offer on the table, you know, if things go through probate and you know, everything works out. But yeah, we're actively looking now, Mike, for another project.
Okay. And that, are you thinking more or less it'll be more of the same, another HMO Ipswich again? Yes. Or are you going to change anything that you've done before?
No, we feel like we've got a bit of a blueprint now from what we've learned from this first one. We've got a good team, good learnings. We know the area really well. We've met some good people in the area as well. So yeah, definitely going to do the same thing in Ipswich again. You know, we know where the numbers need to be as well. We've had a refinance done, valuations done, so we've got a good handle on, you know, what to expect. So
yeah, it makes a lot of sense to do that. And it doesn't mean that you can only ever do HMOs in Ipswich for the rest of your investing career, but certainly from the lessons that you have learned from doing this, it makes sense to give yourself to make the most of them and reapply what you have learned and just rinse and repeat.
Exactly.
And you know, if you're looking to scale your portfolio to replace your income, replace Ellie's income, you know, make it as easy as possible for yourselves.
Yeah.
How do you split the work between the two of you? So it sounds as though Ellie's, you know, certainly from a design point of view, maybe leading the charge on some of those decisions, but have you got clear roles and responsibilities, or do you both just work together on every aspect of the business?
She tells me what to do, I do it.
That sounds like a pretty good balance if you ask me. Is she more involved now that she's part-time, or again, is it still sort of 50-50 from an effort point of view? Like, how does she spend her time?
So yeah, so she absolutely right. So she likes more the sort of design elements of things, and you know, the interiors and the final finishes and things like that. Naturally, that only comes once you've got a project though, and you know, towards the end of it, doesn't it? So so we're both quite actively involved in, you know, deal analysis, sourcing. She probably sources more the deals than I do. She's actively looking on Rightmove. She gets all the alerts. She filters through those. She then gives me the shortlist. I'll then make contact with the agent, you know, on any of the properties that look of interest to us. So that's the role from a sourcing perspective. We both do viewings. We can both do viewings. Yeah, it's quite evenly split. It's quite evenly split in terms of our roles and responsibilities. Okay.
I'll ask her because I'm sure she'll listen to this. So Ellie, if that's not the case, drop me an email and I will set the record straight. Don't worry. From a deal point of view, from a sourcing point of view with the market, I mean, last year was crazy. Things seem to be settling down a little bit. Are you finding good opportunities? I know you had this offer accepted and that's, you know, that's not progressing anymore, but do you feel like there are still opportunities out there for you to buy another project that makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can see just from the increase of, you know, Rightmove notifications that come through in emails that of something's obviously happened. There's a lot more deals that are coming back on the market, or, you know, yeah. So absolutely, there's lots out there. And Rightmove is, you know, people say you got to look at these creative strategies and, you know, do off-market deals, but there are deals out there on Rightmove. We see them. We speak to other investors that get deals from Rightmove all the time. So it's definitely a place to be as well.
Yeah, I mean, like every sourcing strategy works, but again, thinking about what's the easiest route, Rightmove has got more than enough deals for most of us to pick from. Pretty much everything we buy is on Rightmove in one way or another. And, you know, other creative strategies can work. We've got a podcast coming out. I don't know if it'll be before or after this, with a guy whose sourcing business is all direct to vendor based. And, you know, he's killing it. He's making a ton of money, but that is what he focuses on. He's got the Facebook ads running and the full like sales funnel for every lead that comes in.
Yeah.
You don't need to do, if you're buying for yourself and you're doing, you know, a deal a year, a couple of deals a year, I think there's plenty of volume on the open market without needing to complicate it with stuff like that. So like I say, you know, both options work, but if you can get away with the easy option, then yeah, make life easy for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you've started off, you know, you did a couple of projects for your own home, so to speak, to start with, and then now you've done this first HMO. You're looking to rinse and repeat to scale that up. What would you say has been the biggest struggle? I know you've said a couple of things. You know, you've had issues with individual circumstances, but what would you say has been the biggest struggle that you've faced to get you, from where you were starting to where you are now?
I would have said before the course, it would have been maybe belief and mindset. But we've definitely overcome that, and we're, where we are now, we're definitely in a better position than we was a couple of years ago. So the next thing I'd probably say, which is quite timely now as well, because I'm actively looking at private finance, would have been the lending process and the bridging loan and development loan. So if you can sort of skip that process and, start buying property and renovating property with private finance, it just takes away all that stress and headache and burden, and I'd probably have a lot more hair. So
yeah, it definitely has a lot of advantages. Was the first HMO that you did, was that funded just from your own resources?
Yes.
Okay. And then the plan going forward is to use some element of private finance to allow you to keep going.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Got you. Okay. And that's something that you're just really starting to look at now. So you've not got a huge, I guess, from a context point of view, you haven't worked with investors at this moment?
Not properly. So we borrowed some, only a small amount of money from a family member. And it was literally 10K. So that was just to fund the additional work that was needed for the renovation. Remember I said about that contingency, which we were kind of overstretched and over leveraged. So, and that was it. But we gave her, a healthy return on that. So, that's actively what we want to do going forward is, start working more on private finance. And we've had, people close to us asking us about what we're doing a bit more now as well, just from seeing what we've been doing on social media. So, we've had a bit of a taste of what good could look like if you really actively, dedicate the time to do that.
Yeah, no, there's definitely money out there, and it usually starts close to home, which is great. But it also starts just from documenting what you were up to. It will attract people who are thinking, "Hey, this is interesting," because everyone's got. I said at the start, like the UK has an obsession with property investing, and if you're actively doing it, people will be interested. It could be colleagues at work that spot what you're up to. It could be friends and family, people you go to the gym with, people you play football with, Courtney, of course. There will be people who are interested in it, but just don't have the time, the inclination, or, the mindset that you said that you had to overcome. They've maybe thought about it for a while, but never got around to it. And then from there, as your portfolio grows, your experience grows, that network of people who are aware of what you're up to will expand as well, and new opportunities will open up. But yeah, I love it as a funding source. And I think, it'll be good for you now that you said you've got that blueprint of the HMO model in Ipswich. You can start to expand that out as well, which is super exciting.
Yeah.
From just to wrap us up here, if you could give advice to yourself, if you were just starting out, or to somebody else who's thinking about starting out, from everything that you've learned, everything that you've been through, what would that advice be? And I feel like I don't need to make this caveat, but you're saying all the right things about the HMO program and all that stuff, and I love that. But let's try to remove that from the equation. And if it was just free advice to somebody who's looking to get started in property, what would you make a suggestion to them?
So I would say, if I backtrack a little bit again, just it sounds cliche, Mike, but surrounding yourself with the right people as well. So we've got people that we're close with that would always say, property investing is risky. You don't want to do that. Or, tenants will ruin your home, and, tenants are a nightmare to look after, which, some of it is, yes, it can be true. That's the downside of property. Yes. Or one of the areas of the downside of property, but there are a lot more upsides as well. So that would be one thing I'd say, is to, just surround yourself with people that are actively doing what you want to do and have done it. And that you can learn from, but also is mindset. Working on your mindset is obviously a big thing as well, because often, in most cases, it's your mindset that stops you from doing things. Whether it's you want to get fit, or you want to lose weight or get in shape, or whatever it may be. So that's two big things I'd say there, outside of the obvious things that you caveated. So
perfect. Okay, I love that. And then finally, where can we find out what you're up to, keep up to date with your projects? I know you're on Instagram, so where can people find you there? And is there anywhere else online that you're active?
Yeah, well, obviously on my Instagram, on my This Is Court Instagram, you can follow me on there. We've got a website which we're kind of rebranding at the moment now, to obviously, highlight what we're doing more on our projects. So those are the main two channels at the moment, with more to come in the future.
Yeah, well, I'll make sure that we get links to them up. I think you said it's This Is Court. So it's this_is_courts, because people don't always check out the show notes. But if you can't find them, the link will be in there, and we'll put the link to your website up there as well. So that's everything I wanted to cover today, other than just saying a massive thank you again for joining us. I know getting into the specific details of that HMO will be super interesting for people just to hear, exactly what the time frame looked like, what the problems were that you faced, how you overcame some of those problems. And I really like getting into the details of, one specific project. I think it's so helpful for our audience, and I learned something every time as well. So thank you for being so open. Thank you for being here today, and I hope we get the chance to do it again soon.
No problem. Thanks for inviting me, mate. Enjoyed it. Thank you.